Good afternoon, viewers of Fire Service TV. Many thanks for tuning in. We sincerely apologize for not coming your way last week due to a few challenges. But then again, we are happy to come your way live from our studios at the national headquarters. And also, we are also beaming live on our Facebook platform at GNFS Official and other social media platforms. Please do give us a follow and tell your friends and families to be part of today's conversation. We are delighted to come your way again with another insightful edition of Fire Service in Focus. And today we'll be discussing a crucial topic that has impact on building owners and occupants of a building. We'll be looking at the psychology of fire and life-threatening incident victims. And we'll be giving information to building owners on what to do and the measures to put in place to avoid and prevent fires during the occurrence. And we'll be looking at all of that on today's show. We all know that fires are unpredictable. A lot of people cannot predict what actually happens and how fire actually happens. But then again, how many of us can actually tell what goes through the minds of people when they experience a fire outbreak, or what they need to put in place to prevent and manage undesired fires? We'll be looking at all of that on today's show, and we'll be focusing on a few footages where our men were attacked at the fire scene for whatever reasons best known to the occupants and building owners. And this afternoon, I'm joined by two very knowledgeable officers of the service who are going to help us understand this topic even better. To my immediate right, we have the Deputy Chief Fire Officer, Roberta Ganson, who was the former regional commander of Greater Accra region and is currently the Director of Operations for Ghana National Fire Service. Good afternoon, madam.
Good
Welcome
afternoon.
to the show.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you.
How's the new role treating you?
It has always been challenging. And without challenges, I don't think you'll be in the position to come up with other opportunities as success.
Absolutely. We also have in the studio our Head of Public Relations, DO2, Desmond Aka. Sir, good afternoon. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon and thanks for having me.
Right. Along the way, we would have a clinical psychologist from the University of Ghana. He is Professor Emmanuel Asampon. He's the head of Department for Social and Behavioral Sciences, at the School of Public Health, University of Ghana, Legon. He will join us along the show to give us a better insight on what goes on in the minds of people when they face this traumatic experience in their buildings and their structures. Don't forget that this program is proudly sponsored by Blue Financial Services Ghana Limited, and they offer affordable loans to salary employees. You can actually call them on 030-968-196. I repeat, 030-396-8196. You can also WhatsApp them on 050-160-9956, and they'll sort you out as soon as possible. We'll take a quick commercial break. When we come back, the conversation begins.
Power safety. Safety is our home.
Blue Financial Services Ghana Limited, licensed and regulated by the Bank of Ghana to give loans and accept deposits. Open a fixed deposit account starting from 100 Ghana cedis and earn an interest per annum. Call 030-3968-196. Located at Mati House, HP Limited Street, Ringway Estate, Osu. Blue Financial Services Ghana Limited. Every step of you, trust in.
Welcome back, cherished viewers, from that quick commercial break. And you just joined us. This is Fire Service. Before we went on break, I introduced the topic for today's discussion, which is the psychology of fire and life-threatening incidents, victims, and also give information to building owners and occupants before and after fire outbreaks. We'll also take the opportunity to go deeper to talk about how fires begin depending on the kind of structures involved, and also talk about the importance of fire protection systems and escape routes within structures. And also will be taking the opportunity to clarify some fire safety terms like occupancy load, fuel load, and active and passive protection system, and how this contributes or affect us when there's a fire outbreak. So I mentioned that we'll be looking at two videos where we had our men being attacked at the fire scene. So if the video is currently ready, let's take a look at it, sir. Okay, we are experiencing a bit of challenge, but the videos would be showed to you very soon. So I'll start off the conversation with DCFO Alberta Ganson. Okay, the video is ready. Can we have a look now?
This is getting worse.
Now you were in Zoni. Now you were in Zoni more better. How I went to Doji. Stop it. Fucking useless. I swear, if they get two of my kind from my in addition to me, I swear we'll go beat them. I swear.
What's up, this whopper? What's up, this bar? What's
the whole day open. There's not much to do there open.
Whoa, come on. Fucking hell! Pass it! Stand down! Stand down! Fuck's sake!
Oh, me, I know they touch you, man. I know they touch you. Forget that.
Stop just like that.
So viewers, the footages you saw were just videos of our men being attacked at incident scenes because they perceived we delayed in responding and also misunderstanding regarding the presence of the fire tender or the fire appliance. And I'll quickly take Madam's take on the videos we just saw. Madam.
When you watch the clip closely, you would realize that the person who had his house burning could not just control himself. This can happen to anybody, be you a fireman or a non-fireman or fire officer. And the fire officer, from my point of view, thinks he's doing his best. So he also felt, no, for nothing at all, at least you must understand me. We are not faulting anybody here because we believe it is because the public does not understand the way we work or do not understand some of the challenges we go through. And in that same manner, as a service, I believe as personnel, because we know some of the challenges we go through, the fireman will not also be happy to see his colleague being attacked. But from where I sit, I will not fault anybody. I think we need to understand the person whose property is burning the public must also understand our role as fire officers. What the fireman goes through at the incident ground. Within that small or that short time, a whole lot of decision must be taken by the leader on grounds. Looking at how the fire is going to be fought, how he is to protect his men, how he is to protect the property and even the assets that he's using, as well as the insufficient water maybe he came with. He must do something to save the situation before the arrival of the next pump. So I wish as individuals we would also forgive the lay person of his emotions at the time of the incident. Because if he was in his right state of mind at the time, I don't think he would even attack the fireman. Or if he understands that he equally has a role to play in that activity from the inception stage of his building to even the unwanted situation, I don't think he would even fight the fireman. I would have wished we have a psychologist here to help us, especially we as professionals, to know the state of the mind of the affected person.
Madam, in the second video, we realized that they were attacking us because they perceived a delayed response. It is not our wish that we will arrive at incident scenes very late. It's not our wish that we see people's properties up in flames. There are certain challenges that hinder our progress, that prevent us from arriving early at the incident stage. Can you highlight those challenges for us? Maybe that would make them understand us better when we come.
When I look at this particular clip, I remember that was the period we had the Zongo Lane fire. At the time, we had deployed 10 appliances within the region to the incident scene. And looking at the items that were burning, coupled with the type of building and the style of the building, a lot of water was actually needed. It was within that hectic period that we had that particular fire. And the appliance that went there was even deployed from the fire scene to the place. Yes, it is challenging, but if they had not taken an appliance from the place, it would have meant that the standby appliances were from Legon, Adenta, Medina, that would have also taken some time to come. Looking at the hour, that particular hour of the day, that is the period we have the traffic at its hip. So from the fire master control point of view, they had to deploy an appliance from the incident ground, and one of the 10 appliances was dispatched to the scene, as well as the second appliance that was moved, and that appliance had even gone for replenishing, and it was on its way to the incident ground, and it was deployed to the incident. That is why I said from the beginning that because the public do not understand the way we work, the way we dispatch our appliances, which is also a challenge for us because we would have wished that we had about 10 extra appliances plus what we have now. Currently in the Accra region, we have about 20, where 18 are working.
Sorry,
Initially, it used to be 16.
Sorry, madam, not to cut you, but before we started, you mentioned that you would have loved to have a psychologist on the line. We've gladly done that, and currently we have Professor Emmanuel Asampon, who's a clinical psychologist and also the head of Department Social and Behavioral Sciences, School of Public Health, University of Ghana, on the line to give us more insight on what really goes through the minds of people at incident scenes. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to Fire Service in Focus. How are you doing, sir?
I'm very well. How about you?
You're doing great here, sir. And today our conversation is focused on the emotional and psychological aspect of fire incidents. We are basically trying to get to know what really goes through the minds of people at incident scenes. And we showed 2 footages a while ago, and I'm sure I believe you've also seen those footages. In high stress situations like that, what really goes through the minds of people?
Right. Well, first of all, let me commend the fire service for this initiative. I mean, the bit about having an outlet like this, for me, it's an opportunity to reach out to the public, especially for those who do not, understand the kind of work that you do. Now, looking at the question you asked, first of all, we all need to understand that for people who experience, fire, as in the victims, it is always a traumatic experience, because then when it happens, people are not too sure what to do and all that. And then in the minds of people, there is an agency that is responsible for fire, and that is the Ghana National Fire Service. And so for a lot of people, the thinking is that, yes, once the call is placed, regardless of, whether you are involved in another firefighting or whatever is happening, the expectation is that you are there and then, and when it's not happening, then, of course, you see some of those reactions. Like I said, because it is a traumatic experience, usually traumatic experiences are accompanied by, some stress levels. There is usually hate, there is anger, and unfortunately, when people do not know how well to, as it were, display some of these feelings, then, of course, it is the firefighter who, tend to experience this thing. But again, it's also important that we understand the work that firefighters do. We all know that, firefighting, whether we like it or not, it's a very complex and risky occupation. And let's not forget that the people who also fight, fire, are human beings just like, anybody else. And so, in the course of their work, they're also exposed to all kinds of, traumatic experiences, if you like, except that for them, because it is something that they do, you possibly will say that, well, they've experienced it for a long time, so they are used to, some of those things. But given that they are human beings, they also will experience some stress levels. I'm talking about psychological stress, that's what I mean. Quite apart from that, we all know that there usually are, some chemical and, physical hazards. And whether we like it or not, they are doing their work, but also safety is of important priority to them. You do not expect that the person going to fight fire, will also put their lives at risk. Of course, that is what they've been trained to do that, but they do their work with precaution. So sometimes they also, face bad things. Sometimes they inhale smoke, and for some of them, there's even the possibility of experiencing, sudden cardiac death. So given that the victim experiences their own emotions, it is important that we also appreciate the fact that the firefighter also experiences their own emotions. So under the circumstances, what is it that we need to do? And that is why I am particularly happy about this outlet that you have. An opportunity to provide education to the public, because I can tell you, many people do not know the dynamics of firefighting. Many people do not appreciate what the work that firefighters actually do. So it's important that we provide education to the public, and it shouldn't be something that we do just once, but something that we consistently do for people to really understand that, look, it is not that we have, so many fire tenders, if you like. And even if we have so many fire tenders, we have the personnel to actually man those, tenders. And I think that, yes, right from the beginning, we do not expect that people will just understand and then just the following day things will work out. It's going to take time. But I will encourage the fire service that this is a very noble initiative. That if you were continuing this way and actually reaching out to people, yes, we will get to a point where people will understand. And the other thing is that even if you were, doing your work and you kind of like get some of those backlashes, you would also appreciate the fact that as a people, whenever they experience trauma, they will exhibit anger and hate, so that at any point in time, we all will understand, the important role that each party is playing.
Yes. Sir, talking about anger, how can people manage their emotions in situations like that?
Well, sometimes it's a bit difficult. If people really understand what goes into a thing, then their anger is controlled, because their understanding is that, well, this thing will do this, it has to be this way, that way, so their understanding, you do not expect them to, get angry unusually.
Right. Sir, and before you go, what psychological support do you think victims need after incidents like this, when they see their properties in flame and losing their properties?
Yeah, first of all, it's always important that people are, as it were, given the basic needs. Basic needs in terms of, shelter, food. Once that is done, then again, because it's a traumatic experience, we do not want people after some time to be even experiencing what we call a post-traumatic stress disorder. So what we do is to start with what I will call debriefing. So getting the people to talk through their issues, how it happened, what could have been done, what was not done. Once that is done, then there is some kind of an appreciation as to how things went. Of course, it's a very painful thing. But once people usually tend to be assured and they have an understanding as to why something occurred, the reaction will not be as bad as if they didn't, know any of these things or even have the opportunity to, go through debriefing. So I think that it is always important that the people are debriefed in a way, and that will go a very long way to assuage, the kind of anger that they would have bottled up right from the beginning.
Thank you, Professor Emmanuel Asampong, for sharing your insight with us. We are very much grateful for your time, sir.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, sir. You too, Aka. So we just heard Professor Emmanuel Asampong, a clinical psychologist, who just gave us a better understanding of the whole situation. What's your take from that, sir?
Right. Thank you for the opportunity. I would want to take it from his last words, where you asked him about the support for fire victims. In as much as the victims need that kind of psychological support, the firefighters also, in my opinion, based on the stress and what they go through to save savable lives, they also need such kind of support, because many a times, quite recently, an incident that happened that we had to kind of show some of the images, footages of what actually happens. People came at us that we did not do well by showing those gory images and all that. But these are the everyday thing that the firefighter or the rescuer goes through to save all savable lives. Sometimes you could go to an incident where people's bodies are mutilated, they are severed off, blood all over. You go to fire scenes, bodies are charred, burnt beyond recognition. And these are people who have families, and they go to their families seeing all these things. Sometimes it becomes very difficult for them to even take food and enjoy their favorite meat and all that. And so I believe that in as much as the victims need psychological support, our men who go through these experiences also need this kind of support. And I believe that management will do its best to ensure that such support is given at all times. I believe we started something quite recently where the chaplaincy board were going around the stations to kind of bring some form of relief in terms of such particular support to personnel who from day to day go to incident scenes and encounter some of these horrific scenes. So for me, the conversation is right that we talk about it from now, that there has to be the culture whereby we do our best to let Ghanaians understand what we go through on a daily basis, so that they would understand the challenges we go through to be able to serve them. Once they are able to get to that level, I believe their anger, their flared up emotions and all that could be controlled, as Professor earlier on alluded to. So I think the best way to tackle this issue is to go down to their level, let them understand what we go through. Yes, whenever there is an emergency, people already have put their trust in an institution as fire service. They know that we are everywhere. We have enough fire engines. We have enough personnel to come to their aid at the shortest possible time. But they don't know that it doesn't happen like that. So if an incident happened, and then between the time they call us and then the time the incident happened delays, it means that it is also going to result in delayed response. This is what they do not know. And the only available tool or means for us to be able to let them understand that as soon as an incident happens, we need them to alert us. Because currently we don't have any technology that would let us see all kinds of emergency happening within Ghana in real time. And therefore, we would only rely on their calls to our stations and their calls in that manner, so that as soon as we get a call, we also dispatch. So there are issues that maybe as time goes on, as the conversation goes on, we will bring them to bear. But I believe that this is a platform that has come at the right time to offer education to the public, and then also to ensure that our men are also given the support that they need to be able to serve the people that batter them, that subject them to this kind of emotional abuse and all that, in as much as we are also looking at ways and means to also educate the public, so that they also be able to control the anger and then put in place adequate safety measures so as not to experience fires or any other life-threatening situation. And even if they should occur, because of the measures that they've been able to put in place in their premises or on their premises, the effects are very much reduced.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Madam, coming back to you, I saw you putting a few things down when Prof was making a submission. I believe we want to have a word or two on his submission.
Well, I'll take it from the phrase which he said, when people understand, then their anger is controlled. What should be understood? Taking, for instance, somebody has the mind of going into a particular business. Depending on the type of business you would want to do, if it is to be in a dwelling, it is important for you to know the type of structure that will be suitable for that particular business. So that if that is not done and it is the other way round, you the owner, you are not happy, we the fire officers are equally not happy, because it puts so many impediments in our way when we are even to handle the issue of fire management on your premises. I remember just 2 weeks old in Accra, I had to attend a fire around Amasaman, between Amasaman and Ajin Kotoku. This was a domestic dwelling, a residential accommodation that has been built, but the premises had been used for storaging, which is more or less serving as a warehouse. So looking at the way the arrangement was, coupled with the size of space within the structure, it brought so many hindrances to the firefighter. What are some of the hindrances I may want to talk about? You are using a dwelling house for storaging. This dwelling house has a wooden ceiling. The items are packed to ceiling level. How many minutes is it going to take to bring the whole structure down? That is a challenge to the fireman. But under normal circumstances, you know you are using your premises for a warehousing facility. Then you know that a warehouse is built in a certain manner. If pillars are to be provided for this warehouse, it is of a certain standard. And even with the type of warehousing facility would depend on a particular aggregate to be used for the construction of the warehouse. You'd realize that in building a warehouse beyond 3 meters, honeycombs are created to bring in ventilation, and not only for ventilation, so that in future when the unwanted happens, these same honeycombs would take out some of the smoke. Because if that is not done, you'd realize that within the shortest space of time, pyrolysis are built at the ceiling level. These are gases that are collected at the top surface of the structure. So because they are gases, when they gather like that, they cannot remain there. They would have to fall back to the ground. And these spaces are all occupied with items. So it would mean that these gases will fall on these materials. If they are easily burning materials, then virtually within the shortest possible time, the size of fires are going to increase. But is that what happens in Ghana? People build houses to be used as residential accommodation, and later on they are changed for other uses without considering the building they are using. Sometimes even the top floors of buildings that has been given out for dwellings are even used as warehouses, whilst we have people living at the ground floor. Where lies the faith of these people who live in there? So just like he said, when we understand, you can help the fire service to help our community, to help the nation. So what I would say here is that this particular situation is one of the serious challenges the fire service is confronted with. It is very ideal for us to know the space available and to determine the number of things that are to go in there. In course of arranging these items in this open space, do we take into consideration the manual firefighting space for the firefighter? No. You get to most of these dwellings and you realize that items are even packed to the walls. Meanwhile, these walls, the spaces between the wall and the packed item, should be left for the fireman for his use during firefighting operations. There are cross aisles and main aisles. These cross and main aisles, apart from serving as fire breaks for your product or to delay fire spread for the dwelling, it is also the access for the fireman to use. But do we consider the life of the fireman should the unwanted happens? Most of the things we are mindful of is our products. We don't want people to be stealing them, not thinking about the life of the fireman. So when this happens, when the fireman gets to the scene and he finds out some of these things, the fireman himself becomes a little confused, because that means that he now has to adapt another strategy of getting rid of the fire, because he realizes that his access to the fire seats or to the fire point becomes a problem for him. And as the leader of the firefighter, or the first appliance that got to the scene, it behoves on him to ensure the safety of the men he has come with. As they enter, he must be mindful about the safety of himself, who is going to do the initial assessment. Knowing the things involved tells him the toxic nature of the environment. That becomes another challenge for him to go through. But he has all these things on his mind, and he is to ensure that your life is protected, your property is protected. So as a public that fire service works with, or stakeholders that fire service works with, we have been employed because of our citizenry in Ghana. We also expect you to do something to help the life of the fireman, because these firemen are your relatives as well. They are married to your family members and all that. So should they go home with these toxics, at the end of the day, you, the family member, is going to suffer, because you must help to take care of that fireman. So the state provided a law, which is LI 2249, that mandates every residential accommodation in taking a fire certificate. That is residential accommodation. So we will plead here that we want the public to help us. We want the public to help take us from some of this danger, because once the fireman gets to a premises and he realizes that it is a residential accommodation, every residential accommodation have standard products in that accommodation. But sometimes when you listen to the ground, you realize that the occupancy load in there is changed. It is not residential anymore. It is becoming more of an industrial or a warehouse.
Please, for the sake of our viewers, can you please define what occupancy load is?
The occupancy load or the fire load that I will be mentioning along the line are just the items that are in your room. So like I mentioned, that residential occupancy, you know that in the house setting there is the hall that takes the chairs, maybe a dining table, fridge, a television. You get to the kitchen, it is utensils and others. But approaching a house or getting into a house, a building that looks like a house dwelling, then you are told or you find out that they are used as a warehouse. Which products are even in there? How are the products packed? Sometimes you'd realize that even when you are opening the door, there is difficulty in opening, and you need to do force entry from another angle, maybe from a window, till you get to the seat of fire, and that takes a longer time. This, the firefighter, is not the person to do it. You, the owner of the facility, is expected to use the right building for the right usage. You realize somebody puts up an accommodation for a family, and at a point he decides to turn it to a school. We are not even mindful of the numbers that are to use a particular space. So you go in there and you realize that the people are more than the space. If they are a little older and they have been taken through the fire discipline, then it becomes easier for them to help themselves. But where they are children or a crash, then it behoves on the firefighter to rescue these children before his fire fighting. And every particular building or structure has its own evacuation time, so that if the numbers are so large per the space usage, it is virtually going to affect the operations of the firefighter. So yes, we know we are trained to do that. We would also appeal to the public. We understand that our causes of fire makes us aware that there are ignorance, there are carelessness, there are accidental. So we would presume as a service that because you were not aware, we consider it as an act of ignorance. But once we start talking about it, and you know that you have used residential accommodation for warehouse purposes, for different purposes for that structure, let us take steps to change those ones. At least if it's used for a warehouse, you know how much you are getting from those products. You know how precious those products are for you. So why don't we spend some little money to put up the right structure for the right purpose? Once that is done, you help yourself, you help Ghana National Fire Service, and you help the country as at large. Because whatever activity on your premises that brings about fire, you are not going to suffer it alone. Your neighbors are equally going to suffer the toxic nature of the environment, and it will not help us as a nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam, for that wonderful submission. On this note, I would like to take a few comments from Facebook. And here we have Nana Ado Boaben, who says, the citizenry must be tolerant in respect to how they talk to Ghana National Fire Service personnel. GNFS always try their best in all situations. I'm yet to be a firefighter, but it's not an easy job. And this one is saying, great program, Public Relations Department. And we have Isaac Foley, who is asking, please, what of us using the top floors for church and entertainment center? Does that also weaken the pillars of the building? And also, does it contribute in collapsing of a building?
Well, what I would say here is that per what a structure is going to be used for determines what goes into the structure. That is why in our building codes, they give us the density factors of structures. So the density factor would actually give us the number of people who are supposed to occupy a certain space, depending on what it is going to be used for. With what he's saying, I don't know the type of structure he's talking about. I may not know the size of the pillars that might be in place. I don't know the size of space that are in place. I don't know the number of people that are occupying that space. So it will be difficult for me to answer. But once we know we are using a normal house space for something different, let us consider the density factor. So it is ideal for you to come to fire service. That comes, we are saying, come for the fire certificate, because the certificate would help us with all these calculations so that the right things are done.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. DO2 let me come back to you. From a public relations point of view, what are the PR strategies moving forward we are going to employ to restore trust and belief in the public after such incidents and the ones we saw on TV?
All right. Following the conversation, I believe that it is high time we as a service, and for that matter, the public relations outfit, should go a step further by way of engaging more with the publics that we serve, by bringing them up to speed about our response time. What are some of the factors that affect our response time? So once they get to understand that, I think it will go a long way to help us, because I earlier on indicated that when an incident occurs and the time we are notified, a lot of things could happen. And you know, in emergency situation, time is of essence. So the more it takes for emergency responders like the Ghana National Fire Service to get to the scene to offer the required service or to offer the required help, I mean, the affected victims will never be at ease. That is what is the cause, or what creates the fear, the panic, the anxiety the distortion in their minds and all that, because for the victim, a lot of things go through their mind. This incident that has happened to me, the person is confused, is thinking about some loved ones who may be trapped. What is their safety? The confusion could also be as a result of fear. What might have happened to maybe a child or something who may be found in that particular emergency. So these emotions come about as a result of the uncertainty that lies ahead. That is why we have always advocated for the public, anybody who chances on any emergency, be it fire, flooding, entrapment, or what have you, the best thing to do is to place a call at our emergency numbers. And we know that the national emergency number happens to be the 112, and our dedicated national emergency, which is the 192. And we have found over the years that the same public, a section of them, do play pranks with these emergency lines. So when somebody who may be in need of real emergency service may be trying to call us, maybe finding it very difficult to reach out to us. So that is where, again, the education comes in. So once we create the needed awareness, sustain them, and to make sure that we drum them down to their level, it goes a long way for them to also appreciate it. And then also, what we want them to understand is that the Ghana National Fire Service is ever committed, irrespective of the challenges that we face. I mean, sometimes we have not done serious investigation into some of the reasons why some of our men even crash the fire tenders. It's because of the love for the job, because of the urgency with which we want to be at the emergency scene to save lives and safeguard property. And because of that, if we could do some assessment, check the adrenaline of these responders, emergency responders from our side, we would realize that the adrenaline level, the hormones that are controlling their emotions at that time would be more than normal. They would want to get to the fire scenes as quickly as possible. And in some occasions, we've had some of our men involved in some dangerous or serious accident that even some are even yet to recover from their wounds. And therefore, Ghanaians should always have the trust in us that we have the requisite training. We have been brought up in such a way that is our job, and at any point in time when they call on us, we are ever ready to respond to their call. What we want them to help us with is that, when incidents like this happen, people want to see us there and then. I mean, so in an emergency situation, even 30 seconds sounds like or appears like 30 minutes or 1 hour to the affected victim. So that is why we want Ghanaians to now advocate for the service, for more fire stations to be built closer to the communities. Because I have always maintained that once we are closer to the people that we serve, the communities that will respond to these incidents, it helps us reduce our response time. The international standards or the response time has to do with between 4 to 5 minutes. So if at every incident scene we are able to make this time, it means that technically a lot more lives will be saved. But here is the case: we find ourselves in this difficulty where even in the entire country we don't have presence in all the districts that we have. We have situations where we are one fire tender serving about 2 or 3 districts, and that does not help us to kind of meet the emergency response time. So we would only plead with the general public, in as much as we ask our leaders to provide us with some basic important infrastructure. It is about high time we also demand for fire stations to be built closer to us, such that at any point in time when we are called upon, within the shortest possible time, we are there to safeguard lives and then property. And then also the tendency where we overblame Ghana National Fire Service. I think with our constant education, I believe we'll be able to get there. So the public is supposed to bear with us. We want them to understand us so that we can also serve them and give them the best of services that they require. Without their support, we can never be able to save their lives. We can never be able to respond to their emergencies. So in what areas do we need their support? We need their support in terms of them putting in place adequate safety measures. I mean, people have the money to build mansions costing millions of cedis, but they find it very difficult to secure these properties with even smoke alarms and even fire extinguishers. I mean, it is high time they come to terms that you can't invest in all these property without protecting them. We have to protect them right from the word go. I mean, what materials are we using to build our premises? Are they fire rated? The walls, the floors, the ceilings, the materials that we are using, if they are gutted by fire, for how long are they going to be able to withstand the heat and the smoke and all that, so that it is able to protect their investment? So if they are not able to do that, then it means that technically they are making our work also very difficult. So as time goes on, as we intensify our efforts to bring them up to speed about the need for them to also balance and put in place safety measures and then also secure their investments, we would also want them to also help us to kind of advocate, do a lot of advocacy for the firefighters. You know, it shouldn't surprise them that the people that come to them to kind of serve them are not having any dedicated fire insurance. So look at the smoke that we go through, we inhale, the fumes that we take in. I mean, the collapses that sometimes we are faced with, and all the other risks. We don't have any dedicated insurance. So they should be able to bear with us. Now that we are trying our best to be able to do what Napoleon could not even do. It is high time they also came in. I mean, somebody could even have a whole building within a community that the person can even donate to our cause. Why not? Why is it that some of them feel at ease to go about to do some benevolent act to other security services, and they find it very difficult to help their heroes? We are not just their friend, we are their heroes. So if they take care of us, that is where we also go out of the way to also respond to their emergency call and then help to safeguard their property. So I believe that as time goes on, as we continue with this discussion, we'll look at the other areas that they could help us. But going forward, I would want to plead with them that we are ever committed to bring our services to them anytime they beckon on us, so that they also support us by, one, stopping the prank calls, then two, securing their investment by installing fire safety protection equipment, so that at any point in time when they rely on us, when there is an emergency and they call on us, we would also be able to respond to their call.
Great. Viewers, this is still Fire Service in Focus, and time is fast spent, but we would still love to hear from you. So if you have any questions, any experiences you'd love to share, the phone lines are open. The number is 050-96-08744. 050-96-08744. Phone in and share your experience or any contribution you'd love to make. Madam, coming back to you, by way of final words, what consequences do you think face building owners if they don't put in fire protection systems?
When we look at fire protection systems, in comparison with our duties as a service, we talk of life protection being the first, and we talk of property protection. So when you look at our duties, our first duty is to save life. That should tell you how much importance we place on life. So that in putting up a structure, one of the things you consider is life protection. And when we talk about life protection, what are we talking about? We are talking about you putting in place detection system. We have L1 to L5. Let me not bother you with my technicalities. When we talk of L1, what does it comprise? It means that it is a sleeping place, and all the sleeping dwellings should be provided with detectors. And what does the detector does? It alerts the occupants in times of emergency. You can also take into consideration your sleeping dwellings, where you dwell, and your routes of escape. And that is you combining L1 with L3. So if you are rich enough, we would plead that let us cover every space within your dwelling. Once you have these detections in place, if it is in the rooms, you have smoke detectors. If it is the kitchen as part, you have heat detectors. And depending on what items you have in the kitchen will determine which type of heat detector you are supposed to put in place. So that even if you are busy and you cannot have some time to listen around, once there is a detector and the unwanted happens, it will just alert you to move to a place that is safe, that the negative cannot affect you. We have alarm bells, and alarm bell, it is also to alert. I have heard it. I don't know whether the other person in that room has equally heard the alarm. So what I do is that once my alarm goes and I know there is something, I just move to my route of escape, sound an alarm bell to alert everybody in the dwelling that there is an emergency. There is one key thing that is a help to you and a help to the fire service, which is the emergency lights. The emergency light, because most of the times when these fires occur, we end up asking electricity company to isolate the current from the area. So you realize the light goes off. How do the people move to their place of safety? It is this emergency lights that comes on once current is isolated to give you clarity on your path or illumination on the path for you to access. It is not only for your use, it is equally useful to the firefighter, because should I come to the premises and the place is smoky, it is there to help me. Should I come and the place is dark, the light is there to give me clarity to work. So this is about life protection. Then to the property protection, that is when we can talk about the extinguishers if it is a domestic dwelling. But if it is a commercial place, if it is an industrial place, then it calls for fixed installations, where we talk about the hose reel, the sprinkler system, the risers, depending on the levels of the building. And we can as well talk about the hydrants, but not forgetting those of us in the residential accommodation. Water is a scarce resource to us as a nation, especially in Accra. You'd realize that they regulate the supply of water. So we are asking you to help us dearly. You know that our work actually goes with water. Let us have polytanks on our premises to store water, so that even as you use it for your domestic use, should fire occur and we come in there, at least we can have some water on your premises to help the firefighter. That is a little about the protection I would want to talk about. I don't want to take much of the time. I don't think we are finishing this whole thing today. So the rest would come as and when it unfolds. But taking you back to the structure, there is something I have currently noticed with building which I would want to touch on. You get to certain premises and you realize that the 10 feet that is supposed to be left between the walls and the building have now reduced. And sometimes you go to the fire ground and you hear the same people who did this shouting, it is spreading to the next building, it is spreading to the next building. That space of 10 feet serves an important role to the firefighter. If I want to pinch my ladder, that is the space that would allow me access to pinch the ladder. At the same time, because you have followed the rules, the building rules of leaving the 10 feet, the other house leaving the 10 feet, you realize that between those two buildings, you have a space of 20 feet, which virtually serves as a fire break, preventing spread from one structure to the other. But we want to use all the space, and the next moment we are shouting that the fireman did not come in time, even though my colleague has mentioned that time is of essence. But what I would want to place here is that sometimes because of the load in our house, you think that the fireman is delaying, but because the fire has more food to eat, that is why the fire is burning so fast. Let us adapt that behavior, that if we don't need the things, let us take them out of the space to help us reduce our fire load. Once fire load is reduced, you have enough space to serve as fire break, and that delays fire spread. This, the fire service cannot do it for you. It behoves on you as the owner to do it. We are pleading with you. Let us help Ghana National Fire Service to help you and serve you better. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. And that brings us to the end of today's discussion. A big thank you to our guests, Deputy Chief Fire Officer Roberta Agri-Ganson, DO2 Desmond Aka, and Professor Emmanuel Asampon for such an insightful discussion this afternoon. And a big thank you to you out there also for being part of the conversation today. We hope you've learned valuable knowledge or information about how to protect yourself and stay safe in times of emergencies. And this show was proudly brought to you by Blue Financial Services Ghana Limited. Every step with you, trust in Blue. Stay safe and always remember that preparation is key in reducing the risk of fires. Until next time, I'm your host, ADO2 Derek Elomajokba, and this is Fire Service in Focus. See you soon. Have a great week.